It's like you went really hard on trying to find the most ridiculous name possible. Well done. You've achieved it.
Eavesdroppin.
Michelle.
Geordie. Hello.
Greetings.
Greetings. Greetings. May I please have your mother's maiden name? And that's what all the scam emails ask.
Greetings of the day.
Greetings
Michelle.
of the day.
May I have your mother's maiden name, please?
Yes. And her bank account details. I have $1 million for you. Ridiculous.
Going to spare, if only. Listen, Michelle, welcome, first of all, to this conversation, Michelle, and others listening, because you're eavesdropping.
You are eavesdropping on us. I'm Michelle.
She's Michelle. She said it. I've said it. We've all said it. If you don't know it by now, that's Michelle.
And she's Geordie.
I'm Geordie. That's right.
She's Geordie. I'm not sure she's had a glass of wine. I have.
I've had an awful lot of mushroom coffee this morning.
Okay.
An awful lot.
I will say I did have some feedback from a listener saying, you know how Geordie keeps going on about a mushroom coffee? Is that a
mushroom? Did you say
a mushroom coffee? Is that a magic mushroom coffee? People are a bit confused. They think you're on the drugs early on.
No, it's not magic mushrooms. It is adaptogens like ashwagandha and mushrooms like reishi and cordyceps and lion's mane, which are to help with the cognitive function.
And look, who doesn't need help with that? I certainly do.
I certainly do as well, obviously, but I do think it helps. I'm feeling quite peppy at the moment. So the coffee that I have is low in caffeine, high in mushroom.
Well, I tell you, I feel the same. And the coffee I had was 0. It was high in red wine alcohol and 0 in everything else. So no nutritional value.
That's a pre-bedtime thing for me because that would send me right to sleep, Michelle. Yes. A glass of red wine.
I do like it. I mean, it's just grape juice after all. Coffee, tea, coconut water, grape juice.
Coffee, tea, coconut water. Right. So, Michelle, this week we're going to talk about ghosts. And it's Supernatural Week. That's correct, right?
It is.
But first, I wanted to just catch up on a few things from last week's episode, which was your harrowing story about the poor Menendez brothers, who murdered their parents. Of course, there's that.
Let's not forget, Kitty, the mum, did get a shotgun blast to the face.
To the face.
It's quite gruesome. But they also went through some brutality themselves.
Which I didn't know about, so that was shocking in itself. But also my story about the Thames claiming victims and lives. And I spoke a little bit about Mary the Medium, the March for Action that Mary the Medium had called for at London Bridge. She wanted people to come and join her at London Bridge.
Right.
And I thought it'll just be Mary the Medium and a placard. But actually, I went onto her X account and TikTok to find out what was going on.
Yes.
I didn't see a lot of people, but I heard some ruckus in the background. So it sounds like it wasn't just Mary. I think it was also the families of some of the victims that I mentioned in last week's episode, of people who had either died by misadventure or in mysterious circumstances, or by their own hand, if you like, which I think are the reasons why people went into the Thames or other bodies of water. But Mary the Medium seems to think that there's a serial killer, a Rwandan genocidal priest, who is cleansing.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. It just sounds so ridiculous.
You should not laugh. Because when I was watching it, I did think, when I was watching her TikToks, I was thinking, what a load of shit. But then I thought, I wonder if I'll think that late at night when I'm walking along the Thames embankment and suddenly I'm snatched because I'm wearing a provocative tracksuit or something. Because it's provocatively dressed people, autistic people, ethnicities, various things like that.
Right.
So I hopped onto her X, and like I said, in her intro, she's named top 5 mediums in the world, Michelle, a bit like us, top 5% globally listened to podcasts.
Wow. Who does she name? I want to know because we need to pin those for future episodes.
Well, she didn't name anyone else.
Except for herself.
She's one of the top 5.
Okay.
Yeah. And she said that she's solved cold cases and missing person cases. And there was nothing there about the march. So I hopped onto TikTok and, oh my God, the things I was distracted by, Michelle, it was insane. For a start, there's some messages there waiting for me. From bloody Keanu Reeves. Keanu, Get it in your head, mate. I'm not going to respond to your little hand waves or your hello, dear. I'm not going to respond to any
You're
of
married.
those things, Keanu.
Seriously, Keanu, don't you know she's married? He's married. What's going on, Keanu?
Keanu, just give it a rest, honestly. There was a time in my life when I would have been so thrilled to be contacted by Keanu Charles Reeves. That's his name on the TikTok.
It's not Keanu Reeves official with a blue tick.
No.
No.
It's Keanu Charles Reeves. I don't know what he wants, but hello, dear. It's a bit like when Stuart Copeland got in touch with me and said how nice I was or how attractive I can't remember
I know.
what he said.
Honestly, and then they say, can I have your mother's maiden name and your bank account number, please? That's where we're headed.
What do they want? I really just don't know. It's bizarre. Ignoring Keanu's requests, desperate requests for attention.
Stop being so desperate, Keanu. It's embarrassing.
Really. I then saw footage of a woman being arrested for setting fire to her husband several times.
What?
I haven't chased that back.
Unhappy marriage, and she was like, perfect opportunity. Get rid of him.
What do you think, that maybe Keanu got in touch and she thought, well, I am married, but I can sort that out quick. I'm not laughing at this. It looked appalling. There were people taking videos outside this house in, I think it was Burnley or somewhere in Lancashire. I'm not sure. That was mad. Then suddenly, I don't know why, because I'm not following these things. It must be just random things coming into the account. Then I saw Katie Hopkins, that famous kind of right-wing spouting, kind of very divisive woman. I would never follow her. She had a glass of wine and she was musing on the state of the world, fines for various things and the cost of living crisis, and saying that it's all deliberate to keep the people down. And then there was a man that looked identical to Ed Sheeran. I thought it was him, with his baby daughter, showing how even his baby daughter thinks he's Ed Sheeran by showing her videos of him and she's going, dad, dad, and all that kind of thing.
Oh, God.
But anyway, then I finally found Mary. Then I finally pulled my act together, found Mary.
And?
This is why I didn't get anything done yesterday. I was too busy on TikTok. No wonder the children love it.
Yes.
Well, she seemed to pull a bit of a crowd, like I said. She pointed out that she predicted Princess Kate's cancer 2 years ago. And she also said things like, here I am at the march. They've pulled 374 bodies out of the Thames this year, which is a number that I actually said, but I got that from a different website.
And I thought it was over the last 10 years.
It's about 370 a year, because do you remember I said there's like one a week. One a week comes out. But I don't think they're all...
Dead?
No, I don't think they were all murders. I don't think they're all serial killings.
Some misadventure, some suicides. Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Oh, my goodness.
That was my adventures on TikTok. I also saw something about the show Ghosts. Have you seen Ghosts?
No, I have not. But my sister is obsessed with Ghost Adventures.
What's that?
Well, it's where these ghost hunters, they have all of this equipment. They go into haunted houses and they get their gygometer or whatever they have, and they're like, oh my God, what the fuck was that? And they're screaming at each other.
That's a bit like the ghost hunter thing. Do you remember when we talked about, what's his name again? Derek Acora?
Yes.
Yvette Fielding. Yeah.
Well, but this one, it's a bit more modern, and my sister, she's right up in it. She's watched every episode. There's some new one called Expedition X or something. I don't know. And it's all these ghosty woasty tales and people investigating and getting freaked the fuck out about it.
Sounds like
watch
fun.
This space. I'm going to probably have to watch a few episodes because they're glued.
Do it.
Yes, I will. I'll report back.
Well, I think the show Ghosts is a comedy, going back to what I was just talking about.
Okay.
It's like a show, and it's by the people who did Horrible Histories and Yonderland. I think it's one for the whole family, I think. But there's an American version, of course, and I don't know which one's better. Maybe our listeners could let us know. I don't know. The reason why it came to my attention was because there was a social media post regarding that week's episode, which was from, I think, probably about 2 weeks ago now. And it said there was no spoilers, but basically it's a trigger warning, a bit like one of ours.
Yeah.
And it also said that they would share support after the episode airs. For a comedy, that's quite an interesting thing. We no longer do the support resources, do we? Do we think we need to add that?
No, I mean, look, if you want it, you can find it in, 0.2 seconds on Google. Support lines, if you need it, you'll find it. Just saying.
Or you can write in. We love it when we...
We do. We love it. I also love it when we have younger listeners who can't stop singing the jingles.
Like children?
Yes. My sister's kids, they're just singing, pick up your panties and go, Jen.
Well, that's about their grandmother, so they should sing that to Jen. As an aside, Michelle, I had a little idea for our Patreon account because, we've only at the moment just got a monthly drop of interviews. We're plumbing the depths of our friendships and our address books to find people of note to talk to. Not plumbing the depths because Zoe was amazing, but I have got some interesting people lined up for the next few.
Wonderful.
In addition to that, we're both musicians in the past. We have done a music episode, those of you who've heard it. I wondered, would you be interested in hearing some of our old music on there, getting access to our back catalogues, if you like?
That's a very nice idea. Do you know what? I should put a few things up.
Yeah.
Keep yourself great.
Keep yourself posted, did you say? Keep yourself posted.
I was about to say that.
That's an interesting demand.
No, that's a great idea. Let's do that.
Patrons also, because we're talking to a few patrons here. What else would you like? I know we keep talking about merch. That will come after July 2024. I will have a bit more time and we will work on that.
We will. But as Geordie said before, we love it when you write in. We love the voice notes. Kiss Apocalypse, who has been a little quiet, he sent us some wonderful messages. He was having a chitty chatty eavesdropping time with us.
What did he say?
Kiss Apocalypse sent us an email, basically a telерec, recommending a German series called Babylon Berlin, set around 1929.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, and he said there was a scene where a band was playing on stage and he thought, geez, the old geezer singing looks like an old Brian Ferry. Well, guess what?
And it was.
It turns out it was an old Brian Ferry. And he said it was wonderful, highly recommended. So you can get on board with that. Maybe I'll pop a link in the show notes.
Pop that in the telerecs, yep.
And then he says, you are lucky, Geordie, to live in the UK where the best speakers in the world come from.
Oh.
Bowers and Wilkins and Monitor Audio. What a rec. You get a telерec and you get a speaker's rec.
Put those in the Patreon account because I'd like to refer back to those when I'm in need of updating my speakers. I'm going to go to those two brands. Thank you, Kiss Apocalypse. We appreciate you.
Telerex for sure. Telerex, one more. I'm watching telly. You're watching telly. We're watching telly on the telly. It's the television.
So, Geordie, I will just preface this by saying I do know that we decided this was going to be a supernatural episode with ghosts.
Did you get distracted?
I did. I went down a million different rabbit holes. I'm just prefacing that before I go on to my bitsers. My bitser. I'm back to the bitser.
You've got bitsers.
A bitser this, a bitser that. I've got bitsers. I'll start with this because I am in Australia. So I decided to research if there were any poltergeists that had made headlines over the years here.
In the vein of our Enfield haunting, which I love, and there was another one, wasn't it? The Battersea poltergeist.
Yes, there's been a few. And look, I did find one, and it's called the Poltergeist of Humpty Doo.
What?
Yeah.
It's like you went really hard on trying to find the most ridiculous name possible. Well done. You've achieved it.
Thank you. It's actually a place. It's a place in the Northern Territory.
Okay.
So for 4 months in 1998, a supposed poltergeist unleashed mayhem on the home of Andrew and Kirsty Agius, Agius, at McMinn's Drive in Humpty Doo in the NT Northern Territory, Australia, if anybody is confused. Look, it all began with small things like pebbles falling from the ceiling inside the house.
What? And they didn't have a pebble dash ceiling because that would be gross.
Disgusting. But they did have a gravel driveway. So that was the pebbles, like more like gravel.
God.
Oh, look, I don't know how that really works, but apparently that's what happened.
Wow.
The pebbles or gravel was lifted from the gravel driveway outside the house and they were materializing just under the ceiling out of nowhere and landing on floors, tables, beds, the heads of people inside the house.
Wow, that's something.
It really is. And look, it is weird, but kind of harmless. A bit of gravel in your hair, whatever.
That would freak the shit out of me, though.
Of course. It would. Yeah. You would get freaked the fuck out.
Can I just add something, before you go into this next bit? I just wanted to say yesterday I had about 6 or 7 crows. I was at home alone and I was working on the computer, doing an edit actually, and crows. I didn't know they were crows. I just heard footsteps on the ceiling above me, on the roof above me. And then I saw a crow fly off. Then I saw 100 crows fly off. Not 100, about 10. And then they came back. They were fighting. They sounded like footsteps of people. Big, fat, black crows. What does it mean? Sathka, tell us.
And also, I just have this feeling of like, the birds.
The birds.
That famous scene from the Hitchcock film, The Birds.
Forgive me for the interruption. Carry on. The pebbles were falling.
Pebbles were falling. But Geordie, it gets worse because...
Of course it does.
Within days, it escalated from pebbles to knives being thrown around.
Ew.
Batteries being hurled across rooms. Batteries. Spanners. Shards of broken glass. Other shit just flying around. It's even reported, and we are talking about, 1998 here. It was even reported that a CD player, remember those?
Yes.
A round silver disc, you'll pop it in.
Yes.
CD player, thrown to the floor and destroyed.
Wow.
Ashtrays, remember those?
Bloody hell.
Thrown around the room,
Yes.
smashed.
It's a very dated episode, yes.
It really is.
God.
Windows. I know, windows, cabinet, floor.
Windows thrown around.
No, smashed. Cabinet, glass doors,
gosh.
smashed. Everything smashed to bits. Then things came to a head one night when the floor inside the house, which was covered with flying gravel and appliances
Debris.
and whatever,
Yeah.
everything thrown from shelves. Mattresses were upturned. Scraping noises could be heard from inside the internal walls of the house.
Oh, my God.
So look, thinking at this point that they have some kind of demon on their hands.
Demon, yep.
Kirsty and Andrew called in not just a Catholic priest, but a Greek Orthodox one as well, to try and exorcise this naughty entity.
Absolutely. I'd be reaching to all of them, all of the religions.
If you go back to about episode 4 of season 1, you can hear all about us talking about the exorcist and some naughty demons in that, and how crucifixes were being flung at these poltergeists. Well, none of that had any effect on this one. In fact, it was like the poltergeist was taunting the priests, because an eyewitness said they saw crucifixes just being flung across the room in a kind of fuck you to the priests. So then random words and symbols began appearing on the walls, on the floors of the house. There's a photograph of this where a load of kind of gravel pebbles spelled out the word car. Now, there were also other words that were spelled out: fire, skin, help, and Troy.
I don't love this. I don't like it one bit.
So all of these words apparently referred to their friend Troy Raditz. Poor old Troy, he burned to death in a car accident just a few K from their house not long earlier. So all of this, fire, skin, help, Troy, car, was all being spelt out in pebbles.
Oh, God.
And look, the poltergeist apparently terrorised the house for around 4 months. And then, boom, up and left.
Wow.
And look, this case got a lot of media attention. Did I say media? Media
Yes, you
attention? It got a lot of media attention. But it was dubbed a hoax at the time. However, there were 2 ghost hunters, Tony Healy and Paul Cropper. Paul Cropper, apparently he's from Canberra.
Oh.
They actually went to the Northern Territory, spent 5 days in a row and nights at this house in April 1998, and they are like, this is real, not a hoax.
Yeah.
They witnessed all the strange shit. They were in the firing line for the knives and the stuff being hurled through the rooms, but they ended up being fine. And they actually wrote a book about this and other poltergeist and weird occurrences in Australia. I think I'm not sure about this story. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
These dudes who were there really believe that the house was possessed by a poltergeist.
So your feeling is that it's legit?
Look, I think they think it was, and some of the stuff is just creepy. I did try to find more evidence, but I did hit a bit of a dead end. then I tried to find more kind of Australian ghosty stuff.
Yeah.
And I know that's what this episode was meant to be about, Geordie, but I got sidetracked.
Okay. Did you go on TikTok?
No, I didn't. I just was on Google and I got sidetracked. So I've got some titty bitties. Bitty titties.
Okay. Itty bitty titties.
Yeah, and it did turn into my whole story, so soz. So, Humpty Doo, thank you very much. But now...
Thanks, Humpty Doo, for all you gave.
Exactly. I want to talk about an article I read about a man who found a baby alien skeleton inside a cave.
Oh. What?
Yes. So, a guy called Edu Serviventia was exploring Cerro de las Mitras just outside Monterrey in Mexico when he came across this network of caves. So he went in, and honestly, I don't know that I would go into a fucking network of caves if I just stumbled across them, because I find caves scary.
Yes, me too.
This guy, he went in.
Ambled in.
Yes, he went in the cave. He found the mummified Bobby.
Bobby?
This is what happens when you have a glass of wine, a big glass of red wine before you record. He found the mummified body of a baby. That, I think body and baby ended up Bobby.
That's what threw you. I get it. Yeah.
And look, I saw the picture.
Was it like the alien that looks like cake?
Hold that thought. I'm coming to that.
Chicken bones and feathers.
To be honest, it really does look like a little fucking alien. It's tiny.
Right.
Fits in the palm of the hand.
Oh.
It actually looks like a grey. Stereotypical alien, large, dome-shaped head, big eyes, little tiny cat's bum mouth. It's kind of got this skinny, dried-up body, long, skinny arms wrapped around itself. It looks like a dehydrated alien fetus or a baby bird.
I was going to say, yeah.
I mean, the jury's out, but this guy...
Right.
Look, he's had a lot of traction on the internet with this pic, and while I would love for it to be an alien, I'm not sure. I think it could be something else. But if it was a real dehydrated alien fetus, then do you know what? Do some goddamn tests on that thing, find out what the hell it is, and I'm going to report on that.
All right. Well, let's have the picture for the social medias for the week, and let's see if we can get it up and see what the listeners think. We'll put it on Patreon as well.
Yes, I will.
We'll get our investor Googlers.
Yes. Then, Geordie, the supernatural turned into the super freaky when I read this article about a woman in Rio de Janeiro who tried to scam her bank by wheeling her dead uncle into a bank in a wheelchair and trying to take out a loan in his name.
Oh, God.
So, and look, the gross thing is there's video footage of the whole thing caught on CCTV. You can see this guy is dead. It's grim.
Oh, man.
So this woman called Erica de Souza Vieira Nunes just plopped a dead uncle into a wheelchair, wheeled him into the bank, and you can see her hand is trying to it's behind the dead uncle's head, trying to keep his neck upright.
Oh, God.
And you see her talking to him and she's like, so what do you think, Uncle? Could you sign off on this loan? Or do you need me to help you with that pen? And she's there trying to sign it. And then she's like, Uncle, are you listening? You have to sign it. I can't sign for you. Sign here. Stop giving me a headache. She's giving him shit.
What the? And she's actually back chatting him.
Yeah. And she grabs his hand. She literally puts the pen in his hand. She's like, oh, come on. Just get on with it. And obviously he couldn't do it because he's dead. And then someone who worked at the bank said to Erica, I don't think this is legal. He doesn't look well. He's very pale. No. And it's like, exactly. Yeah, because he's dead. And she's like, oh, he's just like that. That's just how he looks, right?
Did they approach? I mean, this is outrageous. Come on, guys.
Well, then I think she said to him, Uncle, are you feeling unwell? Do I need to take you back to the hospital? And so obviously the bank staff were weirded out by this. And they started filming, the bank tellers are all filming what was going on. And then they called an ambulance, which was nice. But the dude is dead. He doesn't
They
need
didn't
an
know
ambulance.
that, though, did they? They knew there was something up, but they didn't know his heart was not beating because I'm sure they didn't approach him.
Well, the thing is, when the ambulance arrived, she carried on pretending that he was still alive.
No.
Even though it was
She's
clear.
committed.
Yeah, so the uncle was dead. Anyway, the police finally came and they arrested her for attempted fraud.
Yeah.
But that's really all they could charge her with because he was already
Really?
dead when she dragged him into the bank.
There's something about not allowing a body, interfering with the dead body, not allowing a proper burial, things like that. There's all
You
sorts of
would
things
think.
she could be charged with.
Exactly.
That's outrageous.
It is outrageous. But look, the big news this week,
Yeah.
and you probably read it, and anyone who has been an eavesdropper will remember that back in season 2, episode 21, we did a story about the German billionaire and heir to the Tengelmann fortune, Charly Haub,
Oh, yes.
who
Yeah.
went missing on the Matterhorn in Zermatt in 2018.
Yeah.
Well, apparently his face has been captured by facial recognition software in Moscow.
Wow.
And the internet is on fire with allegations that he is alive and well and living in Russia with his lover, Veronica E., which we talked about, and I posited this theory.
Oh, wow, Michelle. Sometimes your theories aren't that wacky.
I know. I'm telling you, Melissa Caddick and the foot. Watch this space. So, Karl Erevan Haub, that's his real name. He's called Charlie.
Okay.
The German-American supermarket billionaire tycoon. If you don't kind of know what I'm talking about, he was last seen at the Klein Matterhorn cable car station in Zermatt in April 2018. Never returned back to his hotel, which was the Omnia, a beautiful hotel, 5-star, fancy. And a 6-day search was then launched, which saw loads of helicopters, alpine rescuers, avalanche dogs, the lot, scour the whole of the glacier looking for his body, which was never found. Now, Charly Haub was declared dead by a Cologne court 3 years later after he disappeared, and his assets and fortune were split up between his family. However, an investigative journalist in Germany now claims that, like I said, Charly Haub has been seen in Moscow, where it's rumoured he's living with Veronica Ermilova. We now have a surname. She's not just Veronica E., it's Ermilova.
She's Russian.
Mm-hmm. Supposed Russian spy, 20 years younger than him. Okay, good on you. And she's meant to be a domestic Russian spy. Now, this German journalist, Liv von Boticha, told German magazine Capital that she saw the facial recognition images back in 2022. So she's been sitting on this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And she thinks the photos were obtained by an Israeli-American company that searched the biometric surveillance system in Moscow for images specifically of Charly Haub. And she says that there is a link between Charly Haub's disappearance and a Russian billionaire known as the Scarface oligarch.
What?
The Scarface oligarch is the guy that sold Prince Harry and Meghan Markle their mansion in California in 2020.
Oh.
It's all getting dodgy here. Now,
Wow.
I don't know what those links mean, but the media are loving putting pictures of Meghan and Harry on this story of Charly Haub. The whole thing is, Charly Haub's younger brother, Christian, swore in court in May 2021 that there was no indication that Charly was still alive, and he was declared dead. Christian took control of the Tengelmann Group, the Tengelmann fortune, all the money.
Yeah.
The wife got some money, the kids got some money. But now Christian is being investigated for making false statements under oath because journalist Liv says that the images of Charly in Moscow were obtained by investigators from a firm that Christian hired before he gave his testimony. So it's all getting very, very messy.
He would have known that his brother was still alive and what he's done is illegal.
Maybe even in on it. Now, Christian's lawyer, of course, denies everything. And this is all alleged information, but it was posited back in 2018 even, that maybe Charly faked his own death to run away with Veronica E. Mainly because in the 3 days before he disappeared, he called Veronica Ermilova's phone 13 times. And the phone calls weren't nothing. There was one that lasted more than an hour, which is what led investigators to think that he could have been plotting to fake his death with help from Moscow. She has a pilot's license. There are no CCTV cameras up in the Alps, so there'd be no evidence of her zooming in, picking him up, whisking him away. But also, too, it's not 100% that Veronica is a spy. She's just suspected of being involved with Russia's domestic security service. But on LinkedIn, she says she's a marketing director at Russian Event, which is supposed to be a travel experience company, which could be a cover because what do we know? But it is proven that Veronica was always in the same places at the same time as Charly Haub. Right. So in July 2008, 10 years before he went missing, Charly and Veronica were both in Moscow and Sochi within a few days of each other. Then in May 2009, they were both on the same night train going from Moscow to St. Petersburg in separate compartments, but the trips were booked at the same time by the same person. Dodgy. Right. Then there were short trips where the two can be placed together in Omsk, Sochi, Baku, Moscow between 2010, 2017, which, look, doesn't necessarily mean that they were lovers, but they could have been. And they definitely knew each other, and who knows what was going on. Was she somehow involved in something that he had his fingers in? Right. Dodgy business deals? I don't know. But either way, they know each other, and she was the last person he called on his phone before he disappeared.
So, obviously linked.
Yes. Also in the phone logs were calls to Russian banker Andrei Suzdaltsev. I'm really not good with the Russian pronunciation, sorry. In both Russia and Geneva before Charly died. And another one of Charly Haub's Russian business partners included the notorious self-confessed fraudster Sergei Grishin. That's the real name of the Scarface oligarch.
Okay.
Yes. You know, because of this whole Meghan and Harry thing, I mean, he sold his home to them. He was living there. Yeah. He sold it to them, $14.7 million. So it's big money here. He was the co-owner of Rosevro Bank. He was reported to have died from a long illness last year. But Geordie, there has been no evidence of his funeral. People have a question mark over this guy's death as well. All these Russian ties has led this journalist, Liv, to wonder if Charly had been working for the Russians because his disappearance came apparently when Tengelmann company wasn't doing well. They'd set up in Russia. They were rapidly expanding. I think they were losing money. And this journalist has gone on record to say that, you know, she was sure it's not a skiing accident, but she thinks it's a staged escape. Now, after all this blew up in the media on April 18, just recently, people, Charly's supposed mistress, Veronica E., who for the last 5 years has remained stum about the whole disappearance, she finally spoke out to the media and she said, yes, she did know Charly and they had a business relationship, but no, she was not his mistress and that she has not heard a peep from this guy since he went missing on the Matterhorn. And she said, no, and this is a quote, no, I'm married. No one ran to me. I think it's a bit of a weird Russian translation there. And she said, I only had a working relationship with him and I don't live with a German billionaire in Moscow. This is fake. There is no billionaire in my circle. I am married. I have a child. So she then goes on to say that the Tengelmann company, which was owned by Charly, was one of her clients at the agency where she worked, and she denied she was a spy, denied that Charly ran away with her, and they're living in Moscow.
So she didn't pick him up and take him away?
Yes. And I did find all that pretty plausible. No.
She didn't. She did or didn't?
She's saying she didn't.
No, okay.
And it does actually sound quite far-fetched that someone in this day and age...
Did he just ski off to Italy, maybe? Like you do.
I do. I mean, I do. I ski off over to Italy for lunch and back. And he could have done that, yes. And when you do think about it, it is pretty kind of wild to think that someone in this day and age can fake their own death, especially a high-profile billionaire. So I was kind of on her side with all of this because you can imagine how fucked up it would be to have this events job and be looking after a rich client and then, boom, you're in the middle of a scandal and a fake death scenario and you've got nothing to do with it. So, yeah, I had some skepticism about it all until she also denied receiving those 13 phone calls from him the day before his disappearance. Now, hips don't lie, Veronica. They've got the phone records. So if she's lying, why is she lying? We have to wait and see how this all pans out.
Wow. Okay. That's a bit of a mind-bending thing, isn't it? It's shocking.
It is a bit of a mind bender.
And I'm thinking, what's the agenda here for all these billionaires? And is he really missing? Is he really dead?
I don't know.
So does anybody know what's actually going on here? Does she?
Eavesdroppin.
Why? No one knows.
Eavesdroppin.
What?
Now, interesting that you talked about the cake alien just minutes earlier, Geordie, because we did cover a story about the cake aliens last year. Now, if you don't remember, ufologist Jamie Mosan made headlines in September last year, 2023, when he presented two mummified, I'm doing air quotes here, aliens, which he found in Peru in 2016. He presented them to the Mexican Congress. And back then he said he had definitive proof that they were aliens, even though our conclusion was they were cake.
They looked like a cake.
They did look like a grey cake.
Delicious. That Michelle would have lapped up.
Yes. I was hoping...
I wouldn't have.
No, I was hoping for, like lemon poppy seed, red velvet, something inside. But anyway, so this week, 7 months later, Jamie held another press conference showcasing the actual so-called alien mummies, including a mummified alien he's named Montserrat, which he says was pregnant at the time of her death. This alien apparently is a she. And then things got even weirder when representatives of the Peruvian Ministry of Culture stormed this press conference and tried to grab the pregnant alien that he had on show, except he wasn't even there. The aliens weren't there. It was all on a video presentation. So they all got it wrong.
I thought you were going to say it was like one of those projected things that look real but aren't. Like a
3D,
AI.
like ABBA at the ABBA in London. No, I mean, the thing was he was just beaming it in, it was all on video. It was this video press conference, where forensic odontologists, Neil the scientist might know what that is, and anthropologists said that they said that the mummified bodies, which apparently exist, have to undergo further investigation, and at this stage, they can't be dismissed as fakes.
Oh.
But, Geordie, I've seen the pics and they look so fake. I mean...
But didn't you say that they were just full of, like, chicken bones and feathers and things?
Yes. And if they're not the bones of some ancient Peruvian person or a chicken, then maybe the Peruvian government stormed that press conference because they're just pissed off because they think Jamie Mosan is a grave robber, or he has illegally transported some human remains, or maybe he's smuggling archaeological artifacts, or he's just a dickhead. I don't know. But that's all I got for you.
Oh, that's amazing, Michelle. Not really supernatural,
Sorry.
but bloody interesting nonetheless. Be supernatural. Ghost is in a wall. Supernatural. Poltergeist at all. Supernatural. We are chatting supernatural. Supernatural. Speaking of ghosts, which I will, because we had listener Charlene, aka Chappie, writing in again, and turns out our friend Charlene has seen a few herself. And she wrote in with a few doozies. Do you want to hear them?
Lovely.
Her first one is this. She says, my friend lives in a haunted house. Fact. She didn't say that. I've just said it. Her boyfriend has 3 children, and there always seems to be odd things happening in the youngest child's bedroom. Books would throw themselves off the shelves, strange bangs through the ceiling, and things would be moved around the house. One afternoon, we were standing in the kitchen having tea and a chat when, in the small downstairs loo, the tap decided to turn itself on full. We were nowhere near it. Now, we reported on something like that happening when Becca, the space clearer, went into a house. That happened, didn't it?
Yes.
In the living room, there were cold spots. It felt like someone was standing directly behind you. Despite having the heating on and an open fire, it never warmed up. If I ever stayed over, which, Charlene, I'm amazed at your braveness because I bloody wouldn't, I'd tuck my feet up
No, she just put your kids in the scary room instead.
She says, I tuck my feet up as I was terrified something would sit on my legs. What? What makes you think that's going to happen? Oh.
The weight, and anyone who's listened to Zoe's Patreon. The weight of a ghost on a bed. It's a thing.
There was always a feeling of eyes following you around the room, and it had an ominous atmosphere. They found out after a few years of living there, a little girl drowned in a pit on the land the house was built on. We think her ghost was trying to play with the youngest child. They also caught orbs whenever they filmed anything upstairs.
Well, I'm interested in this idea of orbs because I have seen quite a number of photos of friends where there have been orbs over their heart, and we think it's a dead loved one.
That's interesting.
Always with them. It seems to be same orb over and over again, different pictures, different times, different days. So I kind of think there's something in that. Thanks, Charlene. I think that's a very interesting point you raised.
Well, if you like that, you're going to like this one. This is her second story that she sent me. After my dad died, and condolences, Charlene, I went to stay with my mum to make sure she was okay and to help with the arrangements. On Saturday, he passed. I woke up feeling extremely calm, which never happens. I'm a very anxious person. I get that, Charlene. I'm also the same as you. And even more so as his cancer got worse. That would be a very tense time. Yeah. I just felt for the first time a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and it was really nice. In the evening, my mum called and told me he was gone. Dad was 64 and was due to turn 65 in 4 days. He was determined to get to 65 so he could get his pension because, according to him, he'd bloody paid into it long enough. He wanted something back. He was really struggling, but holding on. He had lots of people round his bedside due to being in palliative care, and everyone could see how much he wanted to stay. My mum just said, "Happy birthday, darling, you've done it. You've made it to 65. And everyone there sang happy birthday. He smiled and then slipped away. That actually makes me feel quite emotional.
Oh, my God.
She feels awful lying to him, but we think he'd understand. I just have to take a pause because that's suddenly really hit me. Very beautiful moment. We decided to have a little do on his actual birthday, which was like 4 days after he died.
Yeah.
Mum was trying to get online, but the router, do you say router or router? I think Australians say router, but I think it's actually router.
I say router.
Router.
Rudy Hill.
But the router stopped working just after he died. It had completely conked out. She'd asked me and everyone else to look at it, but nobody could fix it, and an engineer was booked to come out and replace it. As we raised a toast, I said in my head, "Come on, Dad, give us a sign and fix that bloody router while you're at it." As we toasted, everything sprung into life.
No.
Router connected and hasn't given us any issues since. We also had white feathers appear in the house in rooms with no drafts or airflow. We'd go into one room, come back, and a feather would be sitting there.
Yep.
We are really close, and I do believe Dad popped back in.
Do you know what? This has shades of the story that our researcher Ren gave us.
From Nicole Ansari, her,
yes, indeed.
Brian Cox's wife, yeah.
Oh, gosh. Charlene, shivers. I mean, it's actually a very emotional story and very touching. And I'm with you. I believe in those signals, those signs. When my dad passed away, my mum said she was out hanging the washing, and she said, "Oh, just give us a sign that you're all right." And a butterfly landed on her shoulder at that moment.
Oh, wow.
You know, I do think, look, it could be coincidence, but it might also not be. I think there's something in it. Wow, really moving story. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. We really appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Now, for my supernatural itty-bitty shitties, I was told some time ago by my friends in Suffolk about this famous story, because it's local legend to them in Suffolk. They actually saw a moving play on the subject. It's well known in their area, and it's the Red Barn murder, which I won't go deep into, but I'm just going to give you a quick outline because it leads to another story I'd like to tell you. In 1827, Maria Martin and William Corder had arranged to elope, so agreed to meet at the Red Barn in Polstead, Suffolk. It was thought the pair had left town because her parents discovered she'd had a baby with him and the baby died. Plus, she already had 2 children by 2 different guys. Ooh. One of the guys was William's older brother, and he also died. So Now these two are planning to elope. Off they go, they elope. William would then post letters to the family informing them that she was doing fine, but never her. She would never write back. And after a few months, Maria's stepmother began to have disturbing dreams where she saw Maria being murdered and buried in the Red Barn.
No.
So it was a year later, and the stepmother had convinced Maria's father to go and search the Red Barn, and sadly he did discover Maria's body buried beneath the floorboards. She'd been shot, stabbed and strangled. How's she been shot? What year is this? 1827. Yes, they've got guns.
Horrible.
So that's what happened to poor Maria. Then the story goes on. William was arrested and charged with her murder, and despite protesting his innocence, he was found guilty and hanged at Bury St Edmunds in August 1828. But more grotesquely, William Corder's skeleton was then put on display in a museum, and his skin was apparently used to bind a book about the murder.
Ew.
What? That's just so gross.
This
and
reminds
grisly.
me of Ed Gein making a lampshade out of the skin of his
Nipples.
victims.
Yeah.
And
I know, it's horrible.
oh my God.
But we have in the past talked about times when the ghost of a victim solves their own crime. Michelle, on this very podcast, you spoke about that lady, Teresa, can't remember her last name, I forgot to do research.
Tessa Beresita.
Tessa Beresita, who was murdered by a work colleague. I remember it well. I can't remember the episode. Go into our website and put in the search. What was her name again? Teresa Tessa Beresita.
Tessa Beresita, from memory, I think it was Tessa Beresita.
Okay. Good luck with that search. But she was murdered by a colleague, and her ghost had informed her sister or something of what happened, and they caught him. So similarly, there's a story, which is historical, from October 1896, not long after the Red Barn murder, in Greenbrier County, West Virginia, United States. 23-year-old Zona Heaster Shue died of what was explained as an everlasting faint, aka death.
That just sounds ridiculous. Oh, they fainted. No, they're dead. Forever.
It's an everlasting faint.
Okay.
So it was later changed to childbirth, even though she wasn't pregnant at the time. So a lot of question marks over her death certificate. Zona was married to a man called Erasmus Trout. I think that was his nickname, Shue. And he was a 37-year-old blacksmith who she met while she was on an errand in town one day. So that was the old way of meeting someone, just running errands, and you'd bump into a blacksmith, get chatting, end up married. Despite her mother Mary's objections, though, the pair wed weeks later and set up home at a house near the blacksmith's. Zona died just 3 months later, found at the foot of the stairs by the neighbour's son, Andy Jones, who was hired to do some chores at their home. He was a little boy. Andy's mum called the doctor while Andy ran to the blacksmith's and grabbed Trout. So her husband was already acting suspiciously when the doctor arrived and examined her body. She was already dressed in a high-necked burial dress, and Erasmus Trout became agitated when the doctor tried to examine her neck area.
Oh. Sorry, you're going to get undone here.
It doesn't look good, does it?
No.
However, Zona's mum, Mary Jane Hester, was convinced her dead daughter was visiting her as a ghost night after night, and told her she'd been right to be suspicious of Trout because he had killed her daughter. Mary Jane said that Zona visited her for 4 nights and filled her in on all the details about the situation, including her death. And this is what her mother said. The day she died, Zona's husband was angry with her because she didn't put meat with his dinner.
Dickhead.
And this caused Trout to become angry and brutally attacked her, and it wasn't the first time. But on this occasion, he struck her and broke her neck. So armed with this information, Mary Jane went straight to the office of Prosecutor John Alfred Preston, who agreed to make inquiries. So he interviewed Dr. Knapp, and he admitted he wasn't as thorough in his examination as he should have been, and revealed that he had indeed noticed some bruises on Zona's neck.
Oh.
Why'd you keep that to yourself, Dr. Knapp?
He should be struck off.
Meanwhile, the townspeople told the investigator, Preston, how oddly behaved Trout had been at the wake. He wouldn't let anyone close to the coffin, and there was a pillow placed on one side of her head. Preston, the investigator, reckoned he had enough info to order an exhumation of Zona's body. So a complete autopsy was performed, and lo and behold, Michelle, Zona's neck had been broken, dislocated between the first and second vertebra. Her windpipe was crushed, and there were finger marks on her neck showing she'd been strangled.
Oh, that's so awful. That poor woman.
So as a result, Erasmus Trout Shue was arrested, and his trial lasted 8 days. The rumour mill went into overdrive, with people saying that Zona had given birth to an illegitimate child and that Trout had been married twice before. Apparently, his first marriage produced a child called Goethe, but this union ended in divorce in 1889, with the ex claiming that he was a brute, which makes sense.
Yeah.
His second wife, Lucy, apparently died under mysterious circumstances, with some saying she was pregnant and fell through the ice, while others claimed it was a brick to the head or poison. It was claimed that Trout's ambition was to wed 7 women, which he freely spoke of while he was in jail, and told reporters that he was sure he would get off because there was so little evidence against him.
Oh.
But with Mary Jane and Zona's ghost as the star witnesses, this was looking less likely for him. Despite Mary Jane being told to play down the ghostly aspect of her testimony, she ignored this and told all in sundry how her dead daughter visited her over several nights, regaling her with the tales of her unfortunate marriage and the subsequent demise at her husband's hands. The judge tried to get the jury to disregard this information, but no avail. It had gone in their heads, they'd listened, they believed it, and they made their own minds up. And on day 6, when Trout took to the stand, in his own defence, well, it didn't go too well. He became paranoid and was rambling and saying things like everyone was out to get him. So then the jury went to deliberate. They took a little over an hour to return a guilty verdict and sentenced Trout to life in prison. After sentencing, somehow a lynch mob tried to take him from the jail and hang him.
Shit.
But the mob was broken up before they could get to him. So even though the judge had urged the jury to ignore the supernatural elements of this case against Trout, the stories were out in the open, and to this day, Zona Heaster Shue's ghost is generally recognised as the reason why her husband was convicted. And now there stands a historical marker along Route 60 to remind people of how the Greenbrier ghost helped convict her own killer. And it reads, "Interred in nearby cemetery is Zona Heaster Shue. Her death in 1897 was presumed natural until her spirit appeared to her mother to describe how she was killed by her husband Edward. Autopsy on the exhumed body verified the apparition's account."
Oh.
Edward, found guilty of murder, was sentenced to the state prison, only known case in which testimony from a ghost helped convict a murderer. And that is the story that I have for you today, and that's the end.
I mean, you know that obviously we've covered something similar before, a ghost revealing the details of the murder. Why don't they do that more often?
Well, it would be evidence that ended up getting that guy convicted. That would have been evidence-based. But on this occasion, it was just the testimony of the mother through being the conduit as the ghost was telling what happened to her, and they believed it.
Well, with the backup of finger marks around the throat, broken neck, you know, that does all point to some
that's
truth
true.
behind.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a dodgy fucking shit.
Dodgy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love that story. I wonder how many other things like that are out there. I need to search. I need to find them. I want to know. I love that stuff, and I love your story.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's me done. I think we've come to the end of the line here today, Michelle, for your itty-bitty shitties and my ghosts being able to tell people what's happened to them, which you said you find interesting. So let's look into it for some future episodes, maybe.
Pin.
Pinball.
As we always do. And I do think, Geordie, at this point, there is only 3 things left to say.
Whatever you do. Is that it?
No, wherever you
are. Why do I always forget what the words are?
I don't
Listen,
know.
Start again. Wherever you are. I'm talking to each and every one of you. Wherever you are.
And whatever you do,
just keep
eavesdropping.
Eavesdropping, eavesdropping, dropping, eavesdropping, dropping, eavesdropping, eavesdropping, dropping, eavesdropping.